The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as 12-year-old Jay made his way home from school. His backpack felt heavier than usual after a long day of classes. The neighborhood changed as he walked, from the run-down apartments where he lived to the fancy business district with its tall glass buildings that seemed to touch the clouds. Jay took this route every day, even though it was longer. Something about seeing those big important buildings made him dream of what his future might hold. His worn sneakers scuffed against the clean sidewalk as he passed men and women in expensive suits rushing to important meetings. He was lost in thought about the math test he'd aced that morning when something caught his eye. A small dark object lying on the edge of the sidewalk near the entrance of the tallest building on the block. As he got closer, Jade realized it was a wallet, and not just any wallet, but one that looked expensive, the kind made from real leather that his uncle once said smelled like money. Jay glanced around. The sidewalk had emptied in the last few minutes, with no one in sight who might have dropped it. He picked it up, surprised by how heavy it felt in his small hands. For a moment, he just stood there, feeling the smooth leather between his fingers. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding smaller than he intended. No answer came. Jay bit his lip as he slowly opened the wallet. Inside, he found several shiny credit cards, a driver's license with the name Richard Westfield, and a thick stack of cash. His eyes widened as he counted 100, 200, 300, all the way to $3,000. He had never seen so much money in one place before. His heart raced as he thought about what that money could mean for his family. His mama worked 2 jobs, mornings at the hospital cafeteria and evenings cleaning offices. The rent was late again this month, and his little sister needed new glasses. $3,000 would solve so many problems. But then another thought pushed its way forward, the face on the driver's license. This Mr. Westfield probably had a family too. Jay remembered how frantic his mama had been last year when she lost her purse with their grocery money inside. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in oranges and pinks as Jay carefully tucked the wallet into his backpack and hurried home. The 3 flights of stairs to their apartment left him breathless as always, but today he took them 2 at a time. "Mama, I'm home," he called out as he entered the apartment that smelled of the beans she always started cooking before leaving for her evening job. His mama appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a faded dish towel. Despite the tiredness that seemed permanently etched around her eyes, she smiled at the sight of him. "How was school today, baby?" she asked, reaching out to ruffle his short curls. Jay put his backpack on the wobbly kitchen table and took a deep breath. "I found something on my way home," he said, unzipping his backpack. A wallet. He pulled it out and placed it on the table between them. His mama's eyes widened as he opened it and showed her the contents. $3,000, Mama, he whispered, watching her face carefully. For a long moment, she said nothing, just stared at the money. Jay knew what that amount could mean. No more choosing between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. No more telling his sister she'd have to wait for those glasses. His mama slowly reached out, but instead of touching the money, she placed her warm hand over his. "Big Mama always said character is what you do when nobody's watching," she said softly. Her eyes, when they met his, were filled with a fierce pride that made his chest tighten. "And looks like she raised me right, and I'm raising you right too." Jay nodded, feeling both disappointed and somehow taller at the same time. "We need to return it," he said, the words coming out easier than he expected. His mama smiled, the kind of smile that made the tired lines on her face soften. "Yes, we do. First thing tomorrow morning." As they sat at the table planning how they would find this Mr. Westfield, Jay couldn't help wondering what kind of man had enough money to carry $3,000 in his wallet, and what would happen when they met him. That night, Jay couldn't sleep. The wallet sat on the kitchen table, almost seeming to glow in the dim light coming through the thin curtains. He tossed and turned, his mind filled with thoughts of what they could do with that money. New shoes to replace his worn-out ones, catching up on the electric bill. Maybe even a birthday present for his sister next month, something nice for once, not just something useful. But each time these thoughts came, his big mama's voice followed. She'd been gone 2 years now, but her words still lived inside him. "What's right ain't always easy, but it's always right," she used to say, her old hands smoothing his hair as she spoke. When morning came, Jay had barely slept, but he was up before his alarm. His mama was already in the kitchen, dressed in her good blue dress, the one she saved for church and special occasions. She'd fixed her hair and even put on a touch of lipstick. "You look nice, Mama," Jay said, pouring himself a bowl of cereal. She smiled, but he could see the worry in her eyes. "We want to make a good impression," she said, straightening her collar. "I looked up Westfield Investments online at the library yesterday. This man owns half the buildings downtown." Jay's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. "Half the buildings? For real?" His mama nodded. "For real. And we're gonna have to take 2 buses to get there. So finish up and get ready. Wear your school uniform. It's the nicest thing you have." An hour later, they sat side by side on the second bus of their journey, the wallet safely tucked in his mama's purse. Jay watched the neighborhoods change through the window. Houses getting bigger, cars getting fancier, streets getting cleaner. It was like crossing into another world. "You nervous?" his mama asked, her voice low so the other passengers wouldn't hear. Jay nodded. "What if they think we stole it?" His mama's hand found his, squeezing gently. "We got proof we're returning it, don't we? Everything's still in there, not a dollar missing. Truth stands on its own 2 feet. The Westfield building was the tallest one Jay had ever seen up close, all glass and steel reaching up to touch the clouds. People rushed in and out, everyone looking important and busy. Jay and his mama stood across the street for a few minutes, gathering their courage. "Remember," his mama said as they crossed the street, "hold your head high. We're doing the right thing, and ain't nobody can make you feel small for that." Inside, the lobby was cool and quiet, with shiny marble floors so polished Jay could almost see his reflection. A security guard sat behind a desk, eyeing them as they approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice making it clear he doubted they belonged there. Jay's mama straightened her shoulders. "We found Mr. Richard Westfield's wallet yesterday, and we're here to return it to him." The guard's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Westfield's wallet?" He looked skeptical. "I'll need to see some ID." "We don't know him personally," his mama explained. "My son found his wallet on the street." She opened her purse and carefully took out the wallet, showing the guard the driver's license inside. "City, Richard Westfield, that's his picture." The guard studied them for a long moment before picking up his phone. He spoke quietly into it, glancing at them several times. Jay fought the urge to shuffle his feet, remembering his mama's words about holding his head high. "All right," the guard finally said, handing up the phone. "Someone's coming down to meet you." They waited by the desk, feeling out of place among the well-dressed people rushing past. Jay noticed a few curious glances thrown their way. His school uniform, which had seemed so nice at home, now felt shabby compared to the crisp suits around him. A young woman in a gray suit approached them, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. "I understand you found Mr. Westfield's wallet." Her smile was professional but warm. Jay's mama nodded. "My son found it yesterday outside." "Mr. Westfield would like to thank you personally," the woman said. "Would you mind coming upstairs?" Jay exchanged a surprised look with his mama. They'd expected to simply hand over the wallet and leave. "Of course," his mama said, smoothing her dress nervously. As they followed the woman to a private elevator at the back of the lobby, Jay felt his heart racing. They were about to meet a real millionaire, the kind of person who owned buildings and carried thousands of dollars in his wallet like it was nothing. The elevator doors closed, and they began to rise, higher and higher, leaving the world Jay knew far below. The elevator climbed higher and higher, numbers flashing above the door. 10, 20, 30. Jay had never been this high up before. His stomach felt funny, like it was being left behind on each floor they passed. 65th floor, announced the young woman as the elevator slowed to a stop. "Mr. Westfield's office." When the doors opened, Jay's mouth dropped open. The entire floor was one big room with windows instead of walls. The whole city spread out below them like a toy town. "This way, please," the woman said, leading them across a floor so shiny Jay could see their reflections walking upside down beneath them. People sat at fancy desks, typing on computers or talking on phones. They all looked up as Jay and his mama walked by. Jay felt their eyes on his back, wondering who these strangers were in their perfect glass world. At the far end of the room stood a large wooden desk, and behind it sat an older man with silver hair and a dark blue suit that looked like it cost more than everything in Jay's apartment put together. He was talking on the phone, but when he saw them approach, he quickly ended his call and stood up. "You must be the honest folks who found my wallet," he said, his voice deep and smooth. He stepped around his desk and held out his hand first to Jay's mama, then to Jay himself. "I'm Richard Westfield, and you are?" "I'm Loretta," Jay's mama said, her voice steadier than Jay expected. "And this is my son, Jay." Mr. Westfield smiled at Jay. "So you're the young man who found my wallet?" Jay nodded, suddenly finding it hard to speak. This man was nothing like he'd imagined. He was tall and looked strong despite his age, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. "Yes, sir," Jay finally managed. "Outside your building yesterday." Jay's mama opened her purse and carefully handed over the wallet. "Everything's still there. We didn't touch anything." Mr. Westfield took the wallet and opened it, counting the cash with quick fingers. $3,000, all credit cards, ID. Everything's here. He looked up, his expression serious. "Do you know how rare that is these days?" Jay wasn't sure if he was supposed to answer, so he just stood straighter, the way his teacher at school had taught them for presentations. Mr. Westfield gestured to some leather chairs in front of his desk. "Please, sit down. I'd like to hear more about the young man who found my wallet and decided to return it." Jay and his mama sat down carefully. The chair was the softest thing Jay had ever sat on, like sitting on a cloud. "Tell me about yourself, Jay," Mr. Westfield said, leaning forward slightly. "What grade are you in? What do you like to study?" "7th grade, sir," Jay answered, finding his voice. "I like math the best, and science." "Math, huh?" Mr. Westfield smiled again. "I was always good with numbers myself. That's how I built this company. Started with nothing but good math skills and determination." "Jade's at the top of his class," his mama said proudly. "Teacher says he could get a scholarship someday if he keeps it up." "Is that so?" Mr. Westfield looked at Jay with new interest. "And what do you want to be when you grow up, Jay?" No adult had ever asked him that question like they really wanted to know the answer. Most just smiled and nodded no matter what he said. "I want to build things," Jay said slowly. "Buildings like this one, maybe, or bridges, something that lasts." "An engineer," Mr. Westfield nodded. "The world always needs good engineers." They talked for almost half an hour. Mr. Westfield asked about their neighborhood, about Jay's school, about his little sister. He listened when Jay's mama explained about her 2 jobs and how she was saving up to take night classes at the community college. Not once did he make them feel small or like they didn't belong in his fancy office. He talked to them like regular people, like what they had to say mattered. Finally, he looked at his watch. "I've taken up enough of your Saturday," he said. "Let me call my driver to take you home." "Oh, we can take the bus," Jay's mama started to say, but Mr. Westfield was already picking up his phone. "I insist," he said. "It's the least I can do to thank you for your honesty." As they walked back toward the elevator, Jay couldn't help feeling disappointed. He hadn't expected a reward, not really, but the way Mr. Westfield talked about his company and how he started with nothing. Jay had started to hope that maybe, but the millionaire just shook their hands again and thanked them once more for their honesty. "You've restored my faith in humanity," were his final words as the elevator doors closed. The ride home in Mr. Westfield's car felt like being in a spaceship. The black SUV was so clean and quiet Jay could hardly believe it was moving. The driver wore a neat black suit and cap and didn't talk much except to ask for their address. "This is some car," Jay whispered to his mama, running his hand over the soft leather seat. His mama just nodded, looking out the window with a strange expression on her face. Jay knew that look. It was the same one she got when they walked past toy stores at Christmas time, or when she had to tell his sister to wait until next month for new shoes. "You did good today," she said finally, her voice low so the driver wouldn't hear. "Real good. I'm proud of you." Even though he was 12 and trying not to be a baby about things, her words made a warm feeling spread through his chest. The car pulled up right in front of their apartment building, where a group of neighborhood kids were playing basketball with a bent hoop. They all stopped to stare as Jay and his mama stepped out of the fancy SUV. "Thank you for the ride," his mama told the driver, who tipped his cap before driving away. "Yo, Jay," called one of the older boys. "That your new ride?" The other kids laughed, but it wasn't mean laughter. They were impressed, and Jay couldn't help standing a little taller as he and his mama walked into their building. Inside their apartment, Jay's sister Zoe was waiting, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Miss Chung from next door said she saw you getting into a fancy car." Zoe bounced on her toes, her glasses sliding down her nose. "What happened? Did you win something?" Jay and his mama spent the next hour telling Zoe about their adventure, finding the wallet, going to the big office building, meeting Mr. Westfield. Zoe listened with her mouth open, especially when Jay described how high up they were and how you could see the whole city from Mr. Westfield's office. "But he didn't give you no reward?" Zoe asked, sounding disappointed. "Not even a little something for being honest?" "It doesn't work that way, baby," their mama said, getting up to check on the beans she was cooking for dinner. "We didn't do it for a reward. We did it because it was right." Later that evening, after Zoe had gone to bed, Jay sat at the kitchen table working on his math homework. His mama sat across from him, sorting through bills and counting out dollars from her waitressing tips. "Mr. Westfield said he started with nothing," Jay said suddenly, looking up from his fractions. "You think that's true? That someone could go from nothing to having a building with their name on it?" His mama set down her pen and thought for a moment. "I do think it's possible. Hard, but possible. Especially if you're good with numbers like you are." She reached across the table and tapped his math book. "That's why school is so important. Education is the one thing nobody can take from you once you've got it." Jay nodded, thinking about the way Mr. Westfield had looked at him when he said he wanted to be an engineer. Not like it was a silly dream, but like it was something that could really happen. "I'm gonna have my name on a building someday," he said, turning back to his fractions with new determination. His mama smiled, the tired lines around her eyes crinkling. "I believe you will." They went to bed that night with the apartment smelling of beans and cornbread, the familiar sounds of the city floating through their windows, car horns, distant music, the rattle of the old heating pipes. As Jay drifted off to sleep, he couldn't help wondering if Mr. Westfield ever thought about the wallet again, or about the boy who'd found it. Jay's last thought before sleep took him was that tomorrow was just another Sunday. Back to normal life, with homework and chores and his mama's church service. The adventure was over. Or Stokey thought. Because when the sun rose the next morning, bringing with it the sounds of church bells and street vendors, no one in the Johnson family could have guessed what was about to happen next, or how their lives were about to change forever. Sunday morning came with sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of their apartment. Jay was helping his mama fold laundry while Zoe set the table for breakfast. The radio played old gospel songs, and the smell of frying bacon filled their small kitchen. "You two better hurry up if we're gonna make it to church on time," Jay's mama said, smoothing down a wrinkled shirt with her hand. She was already dressed in her Sunday best, the same blue dress she'd worn to meet Mr. Westfield, but with her special pearl earrings that had belonged to Big Mama. Jay was about to answer when Zoe, who was standing by the window, suddenly gasped. "There's a big black car pulling up outside," she called out, her nose pressed against the glass. "It looks like the one from yesterday." Jay dropped the towel he was folding and rushed to the window. Sure enough, a shiny black SUV had stopped right in front of their building. His heart started beating faster as he watched the driver get out and open the back door. And there was Mr. Westfield stepping onto the cracked sidewalk of their neighborhood, looking just as important as he had in his fancy office. He wore a gray suit today instead of blue, and he carried a leather briefcase in one hand. "Oh my lord," Jay's mama whispered, coming to stand behind them. "What's he doing here?" They watched in stunned silence as Mr. Westfield spoke to his driver, then headed toward their building entrance. A moment later, they heard footsteps on the stairs. "Quick, tidy up," Jade's mama said, suddenly springing into action. She grabbed stray clothes and shoved them into the closet, straightened cushions, and wiped her hands nervously on her dress. The knock, when it came, made them all jump even though they were expecting it. Jay's mama took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and opened the door. "Mr. Westfield," she said, her voice sounding calmer than she looked. "This is a surprise." The tall man smiled warmly. "Mrs. Johnson, Jay, good morning. I hope I'm not intruding too early." His eyes took in their small apartment, but not in a way that made Jay feel ashamed. It was more like he was genuinely curious. "We were just getting ready for church," Jay's mama said. "I won't keep you long," Mr. Westfield promised. "But after you left yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. I realized I hadn't properly thanked you for what you did." Jay's mama started to protest, but Mr. Westfield held up his hand. "Please hear me out," he said. "May I come in for just a moment?" Jay's mama nodded and stepped aside. Mr. Westfield entered their home, seeming too big for the small space. Zoe peeked out from behind Jay, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "And who's this young lady?" Mr. Westfield asked with a kind smile. "I'm Zoe," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm 9. "Very pleased to meet you, Zoe," he replied, as seriously as if he were meeting an important business partner. Mr. Westfield sat down on their worn couch when Jay's mama invited him to, placing his briefcase beside him. Jay noticed how careful he was not to wrinkle his suit. "I want to tell you all a story," he began, looking at each of them in turn. "When I was about Jay's age, maybe a little older, I lived in a neighborhood not much different from this one. My mother worked cleaning houses, and we struggled to make ends meet." This was not what Jay had expected to hear. He'd imagined Mr. Westfield had always been rich, had always lived in fancy houses and worn expensive suits. "One day," Mr. Westfield continued, "I found a gold watch on the sidewalk outside a big downtown store. It was clearly valuable, probably worth more than our rent for 6 months. I knew what it could mean for my family." Jay leaned forward, caught up in the story despite himself. "Like you, Jay, I returned it. The owner was a businessman named Thomas Green, and instead of just saying thank you, he took an interest in me. He became my mentor, paid for my college education, gave me my first job. Without him, I wouldn't be where I am today." Mr. Westfield's eyes had a faraway look, as if he was seeing that day from long ago. "When I looked at you yesterday, Jay, I saw myself, and I realized that sometimes life gives us a chance to pass on what was once given to us." He reached for his briefcase and opened it with a click that seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet apartment. The room fell silent as Mr. Westfield reached into his briefcase. Jay could hear his own heart beating in his ears. Even Zoe, who usually couldn't sit still for more than a minute, was frozen in place, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "First," Mr. Westfield said, pulling out a large manila envelope, "this is for you, Jay." Jay glanced at his mama, who nodded slightly before taking the envelope. It was heavy in his hands. He carefully opened it and pulled out what was inside, a laptop, sleek and new, still in its protective wrapping. "Every engineer needs the right tools," Mr. Westfield explained. "This has all the programs you'll need for your studies, math applications, design software, everything." Jay ran his fingers over the smooth surface, speechless. He'd used computers at school before, but they were old and slow. He'd never owned one himself, never even dreamed of it. "Thank you, sir," he managed finally, his voice coming out in a whisper. But Mr. Westfield wasn't done. He reached into the briefcase again and pulled out a basketball, not just any basketball, but one signed by all the players of their city's professional team. "The security guard mentioned you were wearing basketball sneakers yesterday," he explained with a smile. "I thought you might like this." Jay took the ball reverently. Some of the signatures he recognized instantly. Players he and his friends had only ever seen on TV, stars they pretended to be during their games on the neighborhood court. "This is, wow." Words failed him completely. Mr. Westfield turned to Jay's mama next. "Mrs. Johnson, I understand you work 2 jobs currently?" She nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes, sir. Cafeteria work in the mornings and office cleaning in the evenings." "I admire your work ethic," he said, his voice sincere. "But I also believe talent should be rewarded and nurtured." He pulled out another envelope and handed it to her. "My company owns several businesses across the city. One of them is in need of a manager for their customer service department. The hours are regular, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. The salary is double what you're making now, with health benefits included." Jay's mama opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were papers, employment forms, benefit descriptions, and a business card with a name and phone number. "But I don't have the experience for something like that," she whispered. "You have life experience," Mr. Westfield countered. "You're raising 2 children on your own. You manage a household budget on limited resources. You've held down multiple jobs while still being present for your family." Those skills are valuable in the business world, Mrs. Johnson. Everything else can be taught. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. And there's one more thing, Mr. Westfield continued, reaching into his briefcase a final time. He pulled out a blue folder and placed it on the coffee table. This is perhaps the most important. He opened the folder to reveal official-looking documents with gold seals and signatures. This is a college scholarship trust in Jay's name, he explained. It will fully cover his tuition at any engineering school in the country that he qualifies for when the time comes. All he has to do is keep up his grades and continue showing the kind of character he's already demonstrated. The room spun around Jay. A college scholarship for him? Kids from his neighborhood rarely made it to college, and when they did, they usually dropped out when the money ran out or family needs pulled them back home. Why? Jay's mama asked, her voice breaking. Why would you do all this for us? You don't even know us. Mr. Westfield's expression grew serious. When I was given my chance, Mrs. Johnson, my mentor, told me something I've never forgotten. He said, success isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how many people you bring up with you. I've been blessed with resources, and with those resources comes responsibility. He looked directly at Jay. What you did, returning that wallet when you could have easily kept it, showed me the kind of character this world desperately needs. Intelligence combined with integrity deserves to be supported. Jay felt something warm run down his cheek and realized he was crying. He tried to wipe the tears away quickly, embarrassed, but Mr. Westfield pretended not to notice. This isn't charity, the wealthy man said firmly. It's an investment in potential. All I ask in return is that someday, when you're in a position to help someone else, you remember this moment and do for them what I'm doing for you now. 5 years passed like pages turning in a storybook. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. The same cracked sidewalks, the same corner store, the same basketball hoop with no net. But the people had changed, especially Jay. At 17, he stood tall on the stage of his high school auditorium, the blue graduation gown hanging neatly on his broad shoulders. The valedictorian's medal gleamed gold against the blue fabric. His voice, no longer the uncertain voice of a 12-year-old boy, carried strong and clear through the packed room. Life can change in a single moment, he told his classmates and their families. 5 years ago, I found a wallet on the street. It was full of cash, more money than I'd ever seen. I could have kept it. Nobody would have known. From the front row, Jade's mama watched him, her eyes shining with tears and pride. Next to her sat Zoe, now 14, her hair braided beautifully for the occasion. And beside them sat Mr. Westfield, his hair a little grayer now, but his back just as straight, his suit just as perfect. But my mama taught me that what you do when nobody's watching shows who you really are, Jay continued. So we returned that wallet, and that one decision changed everything. In the years since that Sunday morning when Mr. Westfield had come to their apartment, life had indeed changed. Jay's mama no longer came home with aching feet and tired eyes. As a department manager at one of Westfield's companies, she wore smart business clothes and had enough energy after work to help with homework and attend school events. Their apartment was still the same one, but it had new furniture, reliable heating, and shelves full of books. Jay's room had a desk where he'd spent countless hours working on that laptop, designing buildings, solving equations, preparing for the future. Some people might call it luck, Jay said from the stage. Finding that wallet, meeting a man who wanted to help. But I think it was more than luck. I think life sometimes tests us, and how we respond to that test determines what happens next. He looked out at the audience, at his classmates from all walks of life, at their families who had sacrificed for this day. Many of them knew his story. It had been in the local paper. Local millionaire sponsors youth after act of honesty. Some had been skeptical at first, wondering what the rich man really wanted. But over the years, as they saw the mentorship continue, as they saw Jay thrive, the skepticism had faded. The most important thing I've learned, Jay said, is that success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about who you help along the way. That was a lesson he'd taken to heart. With Mr. Westfield's encouragement, Jay had started a tutoring program for younger kids in the neighborhood. Every Saturday morning, they gathered in the community center, working on math problems and science projects, dreaming bigger dreams than they had before. Next fall, I'll be heading to State University to study civil engineering, Jay announced, to cheers from his classmates. But I'm not going alone. 5 other students from our tutoring program have earned scholarships too. More cheers erupted, and Jay waited for them to quiet down. In the front row, Mr. Westfield nodded slightly, a small smile on his face. When I was 12, I thought integrity meant doing the right thing even when it's hard, Jay said. Now I know it's more than that. Integrity is doing the right thing, and then using whatever comes from that to help others do the same. After the ceremony, as families gathered to take pictures and celebrate, Mr. Westfield shook Jay's hand firmly. I'm proud of you, son, he said. You've done more with this opportunity than I ever imagined. Jay smiled. I had good teachers, he replied, looking at his mama who was showing off his medal to anyone who would look. And I'm just getting started. A group of younger kids from the neighborhood had come to see Jay graduate. They'd crowded around him now, full of questions about college and engineering. Jay knelt down to talk to them at eye level, the way Mr. Westfield had always done with him. The wallet was just the beginning of the story, he told them. The real story is what happens after, what you do with the chances you're given. And as the summer sun streamed through the high windows of the auditorium, lighting up the faces of those children, Jay knew that his story, their story, was still being written, one honest choice at a time.